I contribute to a community? Because that was the biggest thing. Because I was like, I have more to give, but I just can't do certain things right now.
Yeah.
And I had always been talking with my co-host Michael Briers about we should start a podcast, we should do this, we should do that, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was, I would say, like, the inspiration kind of came, well, Martin's doing this core conversations for Pilates, like, why can't I do something like that, right? And so again, it was actually kind of like exchanging ideas and, okay, how do I do this? And I was like, okay, perfect, right? And then I called Mike out of the blue one day, and I'm like, listen, I'm starting a podcast on jiu-jitsu, focusing on Canadian academies, and we're going to talk about it. You in or out? I'm doing it now. It's like, okay.
It's not like, I need your help, can you support me in this? It's like, you in or out.
Like, that's kind of how it went, right? Because it was like, because we had talked about it for so long about doing it, and then we were like, like, we got to think of a name, we got to do this, and I was like, okay,
just go,
and that's really what it was. And it was like, nobody's stopping us from doing this, right? Mm-hmm. And again, we'll find people who want to do it, and we'll build off that. And it's been really good because it's a lot. And again, we didn't just stick with jiu-jitsu. We've had individuals through the fitness world, physiotherapists. I just had a biomechanicist on yesterday. So like, we've had different fields of the health and fitness industry, but in martial arts mostly. But it's been eye-opening to see, especially all these different academies and all these different individuals going through this similar types of struggles, especially being in Canada. And then we've also had US guests on as well to kind of feature the differences on how some places have just, we're continued on like normal. And then we've had places where they just weren't allowed to do certain things. So it's been eye-opening to see how these individuals have, kept their own mental states, how they've figured out how to grow, how they've been able to maintain their client base and engage their students still, and still have that passion to drive what they love, and which is their business.
Right. Did you hear any real clever, innovative ways that people have used to stay connected with their communities?
So one of the biggest ones was like, some of the academies, as soon as they figured out that, okay, we're not going back within the first couple of weeks, because again, there was a lot of hesitancy before, like, I'm not shutting down my business. I don't know how to do this, right?
Yes.
And downfall for some individuals because they couldn't figure out how to find that line of, how do I keep clients engaged but work within the parameters I have?
Yes.
And some of those businesses, they've shut down, and I don't know if they'll ever be able to come back from that. Right. But the other individuals were really smart to figure out, okay, we got to get on Zoom right away. And they utilize Zoom to an online platform to figure out how to do, whether it being beginner solo belt drill, like solo individual drills, or partner with like people in the household. So like kids classes, so parent and kid classes were the biggest things that went up, and that was able to help engage people. One of our guests, and my good friend Patrick Terrell, and he runs this academy, academic studio. So shout out to them. He was super smart because just in the midst of this whole thing, he had just done this huge renovation in his basement. And his biggest thing is he realized, okay, this is going to, and he created this studio, beautiful white matted, white walled studio. And he set up his cameras and everything. And he developed basically an online training platform, which had three portions to it. Online one-on-one jiu-jitsu classes with a solo dummy, so you could learn how to build your own dummy and do solo drills type thing.
Okay.
Animal flow for kids and individuals to kind of add the element of movement, but fitness as well, kind of adding that like yoga feel. And then his own personal like training / kids option. But the main focus was online, kids and adults incorporating together, so kids and parents classes, or just kids classes, or just adult classes, but all online.
Nice.
And out of all the individuals I've seen online, which I've had good opportunity to talk to and see, he's almost done it the best.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who are watching, listen to it through the ears of like, okay, what pivots can I make with my Pilates business? What pivots can I make with my boot camp or fitness business or whatever you do? And like, I always listen to people in the other industries talk about how they made their pivots simply because we start to think within our own box, right? So in the Pilates space, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do online classes because everyone's doing online classes. I'm going to do this. Like, so like what you just said a minute ago about parent-child classes so that you can have interaction with someone that's already in your bubble, that's brilliant, right? So why haven't we in the Pilates space said like, Pilates for like teens and kids or like mom and daddy daughter Pilates classes or whatever, like thinking about it differently by hearing what other industries have done to adjust and to adapt.
Point where it's like, right?
Hey, Aaron, sorry, you're cutting out a little bit there.
Oh, okay.
Use a bit of a...
Thing is like, is that better?
It's funny, like when you talk, like it drops off the first 2 or 3 words and then it picks up. Keep talking.
What I was saying was, I think like with the industry in general, these kids are home. And I think, and again, like having them home, we have to get them doing something, right? And as much as we want to have the ability to send them to hockey, send them to these team sports that they were normally in, it's just not an option right now. So, and I think that's where a lot of people like, and again, trainers themselves, and then Pilates, you have to be innovative. Okay, how can I get the kids involved? And it doesn't have to necessarily fit the parents' goals, but how do we get, if the goal is business retention, connect more members of the family building off that.
Yeah.
Your goal as far as business retention goes, and then you can figure out what to do with your client and what their needs are. Because if you can hit 2 birds with 1 stone, that's amazing, right? But it's all about finding a balance of what you want to accomplish for clients, and then how can you make it work with them as well because of the situation.
Right, exactly. I see Swansea Pilates is a lady that is in Wales. And she came on the other day and she was talking about how like there's not that many studios in Wales. So like your community is vast, but then at the same time you want to show value to like your immediate community. So is jiu-jitsu the type of thing where like once it starts to open up that you could just go outside and just do stuff on your street and just build like a kind of like a hyper local community with your work? At the same time you're trying to do like more online stuff or try and find like those kind of things too, or no?
I think 100%, like the jiu-jitsu community will come back. I think it's like, it's almost at the point where it's like guys just want to train. And I think it's where it needs to, like, again, with the vaccines, for example, you'll never be able to have that 100% assurance that I'm going to be safe doing a contact sport, right? Yes. Right. But I think the biggest thing is you have to have, and this is where I do believe the shift and the pivot needs to happen, where it be small group, has to be control, because there's no way right now we're going to be able to go, all right, 50 people on the mat sweating all over the place,
right?
With the absence of vaccines. I just don't see that happening, and I don't see it being safe because you have so many different variables happening in so many different interconnected circles, right?
Right.
And again, the argument of, and some individuals might be screaming at me online and being like, well, you know, if you're just fit, you'll be fine. You don't want to get bad. I understand that, but it's not about me. It's about the other people, right? Like, so that's how I would kind of look at it. So you have to find levels of sanity, I would say.
Yes.
But mine is going away anytime soon. I think there's always going to be those individuals that just don't feel that comfortable yet doing Zoom. And I think academies still need to offer that option. So having that, hey, we can have in person because that's what we want to do, but we have to have a camera on to interact with those individuals who are just not there yet.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. That hybrid model.
That hybrid. I think we still, that is a model that needs to adapt, I think, in every industry. Right.
Yes.
And again, like I've said it with other individuals. I believe that, and I don't want to condemn, or again, I'm not the smartest person, right? But I just look at kind of how phases work. I don't believe the big box model right now is a viable option, especially in a climate that keeps changing, right?
Absolutely.
Where the open gym concept of, all right, let's just go and do our thing and stay there for 4 hours and, not clean our machines and this and that. Like those days are done.
Long gone. Yeah.
Long gone. Where, and again, like I said, some people might be screaming at their Instagram or listen to this podcast later and go, what the F does that guy know? And that's fair. That's 100%. But yes. I think to adapt that. And there's a lot of companies that don't want to adapt that. Right. And they're like, nope, this is how we operated for the last 20 years and this is how we're going to do it. And that's fair, but I don't think it's going to work. And I don't think clientele, I think you're going to get your individuals who are, I'm not worried about it. I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's fair. They can have that decision. But I think if you're looking for long-term success, you need to adapt to that smaller business model where you're able to house that long-term relationship with clients and build those relationships. Because now, hey, you've taken my safety into account. You've taken the care of your employees' safety into account. You've taken all these measures. This is a good investment for me. It's a good investment for my family. It's a good investment overall.
Right, exactly. Joel Crosby has a studio, and he was saying, like, yes, that is what we've had to do, the hybrid sessions. Offering both concurrently is great because then that keeps people connected. And I was saying to a colleague here too, even just as a value add, like, I mean, my online classes, there'll be days I have 5 people in it, and there's days I have 1 person in it, but I'm not ever taking it off of my schedule because even for my live people, when I have the ability to say, okay, well, now you could buy these 10 sessions, you also get your online sessions as well, right? So it becomes a value add, and I can position it that way because it takes so long to build that online presence. It takes so long to build those online classes. It's like building a small group class where everyone is paying. Like you could do it forever with free people in it, but when the money has to come into it, then you see that's when like the numbers start to drop off, right? So
example. So the idea of why you want to have the online hybrid model, right? So if your facility allows you to have individuals in there, awesome, that's great, right? Mm-hmm. Now let's just say the individual who's in your class every Wednesday and Friday, because it's 2 classes a week, for example, they come in, but now they can't come in because for whatever reason on Saturday they were exposed, right? Yes. And they haven't been to your facility, and they're not sick, they've just been exposed. Right? That individual now needs to quarantine they need to isolate for 14 days, according to Health Canada, which is great. And if they decide to do that and they don't come to the facility to now put all of your other students at exposure, but now they have the ability to still stay engaged in your class for the next 2 weeks and stay online, participate with you and not lose a step, because what's the biggest thing we get as clients, right? They got sick, progress, right? And they lost a week, and now they're not motivated, right? And then it takes that much, especially like Christmas holidays is a perfect example, right? And if you had an individual you're working with like from like September to like November 25th, right? And they're like so gung ho, right? And then December rolls, and then you roll into December, and it's like, it's a drag. I just want to get through Christmas, and get through here, and then New Year's hits, like, you know what? Like, it's like trying to restart the battery with a client
again. And
it's like you can't do it. But if you have that ability for that online, you're like, hey, okay, perfect. This is how I can build off that. Now you got to be creative, right? You got to figure out how to keep those individuals on an online platform. But again, if the client's engaged, they're going to be engaged, right? It's how they react. In jiu-jitsu, it's a little different because we got to get a little fancy on how it works, but it's doable.
It is doable. It just takes so much energy, right? And the other question too, right? And now, like, and you know, from my days working in our big box gym that we both worked at, it went from my job when I was doing the education piece went from being a live course to an on-demand course where now it's like on video and all those different things. And then there's always a sentiment that you're not getting the same level of teaching, right? So what's going to happen in the jiu-jitsu world when it comes to the belting and evaluations and stuff like that? Like, how have they thought about that piece and how that can continue to grow and still be quality at the same time?
Interesting topic, because I think when it comes to like striping, for example,
Yes.
so like striping, for the break this down for individuals listening at home. The belt system kind of works from white, blue. Uh, every level of the belt has stripes on it, right? So
Okay.
four white stripes, and then basically 4 white stripes per belt, and then
Okay.
basically it kind of goes from there. And so when you hit your black, it's a whole other story. And kids is a little bit different, but let's just keep it simple.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like levels within the belt, it's easier to say, hey, this individual has progressed through, the instructor can see what's going on, right? And kind of build off that to build into stripes. When, especially in that white belt level, I think that's an easy way to kind of, hey, this individual can work here. When we start getting into colored varied belts, it's going to be very difficult for an instructor to maintain quality if there's not touch and feel of actual live action, right? Of like being able to move, because you can only simulate so much on a dummy.
Yes.
Like that's, I'm just being real, right? Between actual human movement compared to.
Right, because jiu-jitsu is like, I mean, from the little I understand from being around you, like there's a lot of like balancing and counterbalance and leverage and stuff. So you have to feel someone's pressure to know when to do the next move, and those kind of things you can't obviously tactile, read over online, right? So
It's going to be up to the instructor, obviously, to know their student as well as they do, to understand, okay, is this an individual I'm ready to move up or not, right? But I think the biggest thing is and making them feel part about the program. That's the biggest thing, because if they're part of the program, and jiu-jitsu is a journey. It's not, yes, it is about getting recognized and achieved, but those things, again, you have to look at jiu-jitsu as, it's a 10-year journey from white to black. My journey from white belt to black belt was almost 15 years, right? So, and again, it's been times of like, I'm not going to train. I don't feel I can do it, or injuries, or all those certain things, right? So if you have a student that understands the process of like, hey, this is going to take some time, you're going to be more successful in retaining that student to build off that, especially in an online platform.
Right.
Where a series of moves, and then the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu had this one thing where it was called, it was like the online blue belt program, where basically you could film the moves that you had to do, and then you could achieve your blue belt by doing this at home on your own.
Right.
Now it's been kind of ridiculed, like, oh, you're a Gracie garage gym.
you're
blue belt,
a mail order blue belt.
So but again, like it comes to feel, right? Like, can this individual go and now roll, when we roll is like sparring, with another individual and be successful, right? And if they can't do that, that's kind of putting it, not a stain, but it's not allowing the student to progress the way they want to. And that's why I said, like, that's why we as jiu-jitsu academies will have to get creative and figure out how to pod, like Trust Pod, for example. And these things are happening throughout the city. I'm not going to name clubs or anything like that. They are happening because people still want to train, right? But figuring out how to do it in a safe, controlled environment is going to be better than having a guy set up an underground training floor in his basement with who knows coming in. Right? So business is to figure out, okay, how can we make this as safe as possible? And again, have contact and tracing information until we have a full vaccine roster. Then you're going to have success.
Right. And with Joel, the JC Vitality Method, in the Pilates world, those are the conversations that we're having more and more too, is like, how do you do, what does online training look like? And what does a hybrid model look like? How do we evaluate success? How do we, you know what I mean? Because I can give you all the stuff on theory, right? And I guess it's the same with jujitsu. You can give the person theory all day, they can practice it all day, but at some point, you still got to be able to read tactile cues in the Pilates world. You got to be able to see, like, how are they coaching? Like I say, from 360 degrees. Like they're not just standing in one spot. Like, there's so many other intangibles or tangibles, I guess, that you need to be able to evaluate as well as knowing the theory, right? Because I can do, like you see it, like the ISSA, right, for personal training. Like you could do your 100%, your whole personal training certification online now. Boom, like just like get it, do some things, memorize the answers, answer 85 multiple choice questions, and I am a certified personal trainer, right?
Like you said, right? It's all about like how good of a coach is your coach, and how good a coach can you be, right?
Right.
Like when we look at, like, even when I was practicing Pilates regularly at the club with, especially like our old instructor Joanne, right?
Yeah,
Where
right.
learning how to do a teaser, right? But do a teaser properly, right?
Right.
There's the ways to drive it with your arms and get your chest up and straighten your legs and all that. But are you using the actual muscles that you should be using? Are two different things. Are you controlling? Are you cheating or are you controlling? Right? So there's two. And again, we can cheat in jiu-jitsu, right? To figure it out. But again, the proper form of jiu-jitsu is like, okay, did you use the actual technique? I'm just seeing Mike's comment, like, we want names. I'm like, I'm not saying the names.
No names.
No names. But sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, before you go back to that train of thought, like in the same way you said white belt forever, and I was like hashtag white belt forever, that one you just said a minute ago is just like that. Like, are you cheating or are you controlling?
Force a movement to happen.
Yes.
But real jujitsu is the movement, you're ahead of the actual movement before it happens. You know where you want to put that individual. And that's what, when we look at like black belt level and above, like the guys that are like way better than me, they know 10 steps ahead of where they want to put me before I think about it, right? And if you can end jiu-jitsu in a joke where it seems so stupid that this person fell into your trap that make the other individual laugh, because it was like, I was that dumb, I fell for that, you have now accomplished what we call true jiu-jitsu. You've made it funny. It's great.
Interesting.
Because now, like, you laid this trap out for this individual, and they fell right into it, and it's that funny.
Yes. That's awesome. So they're basically, so in that situation, like, I'm the person who just lost, I'm just looking at myself like, that was so obvious. How did I fall for that? They just have to laugh at yourself.
Again, in a controlled environment where obviously we're rolling, we're having fun with it, that's how it should feel, right? So that way, hey, you tapped me, you got me, cool, let's go again, right? And that way we can continue the train of training and being able to learn from each other and learn movement or learn feel and all that, where it becomes, if it's fighting or self-defense, that doesn't end with a high five and a fist bump. That ends with you unconscious or a broken arm.
Right. Right. True. So that going back to that line again, like, are you cheating or are you controlling? I love that, because like that goes right back to the Pilates world, right? Like, I mean, there's so many ways that we can work our way around movements and make it look pretty online, but the reality is that I muscled my way through it, or I didn't breathe through that, or I didn't use certain things. So like, there's so many parallels, and that's the fun that I like. I like talking shop in different arenas because we see the parallels in terms of how we do it. Aaron, I don't think I've ever asked you this question, but like, how did you find jiu-jitsu? In the same way I ask people how you found Pilates, like, how did you actually find jiu-jitsu amongst the other martial arts and movement modalities? Why was it that you landed at?
So it actually kind of started where I originally started with karate and like striking sports, right? That's kind of my original touch into jiu-jitsu, into like the martial art world, right? And then what happened was, like, obviously UFC, the #1 came around, and my karate instructor was really into it. And he's like, the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu does this. And we learned a very, very minimal amounts of it back in like 1996, 1997. And wow, this is amazing. How does this work or whatever? And then I kind of stepped away from martial arts for the longest time. And then what happened was I actually had a friend, a really good friend, Jason Gaynor. So we were working together at Part Source, which was the automotive world that I was in before all this fitness stuff happened. And he's like, I just went to this class because the UFC, like Ultimate Fighter, had just been on. We started watching that kind of stuff, and I was like, I just went to this jiu-jitsu class. You got to come with me. And I'm like, okay, I'll come with you. Let's go. Yeah. No problem, right? Like, I'm thinking I'm just going to go try this new thing out because I saw it on the Ultimate Fighter. This looks really cool. Yes. And now it's kind of like going back into my karate days. I'm like, oh, okay, how could this be different? And so I go into this class and start learning how to do certain things. And I had always kind of like known how to like wrestle and do certain things throughout different like submissions, but not really. Like kind of didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing stuff, right? And front roll, back roll, shrimps, whatever. And then we get to this point where like, okay, so now we're gonna roll, right? And so the instructor, Paulo Cardoso at the time, sets me up with one of his female white belts or whatever, and she beats the crap out of me, like literally beats the crap out of me, chokes me out. The whole deal. Like if you want to go and feel like less of a person, you go to a jiu-jitsu class on the first day and get choked out by a girl. They'll change their thinking pretty quickly. Right?
Yes.
So and again, I wasn't mad about it, right? I was just like, how did this happen? Like, what is going on? Right? And I was like, I was dying. I'm like, so like, I feel like I was going to have a heart attack. I'm just like, what is this? I'm like, that's it. I signed up right there. And I go home. I was living at home at the time. My mom's like, what did you do? I'm like, I went to this class, signed up. She's like, why did you sign up for a class? I'm like, no, Mom, I'm going to do this I think this is awesome, right? I'm going to do it. It's like, okay, whatever. And then here we are. Like, again, but it's been a constant battle of myself against myself and like learning new things and building off that. And again, it came to the point where it's like, again, I've had my ups and downs and spots where I've stopped and had to take a break because of X amount of circumstances, but I've always led my path back to it. And it really finds me a center more than anything, because I think that's what everybody needs. They need to have, it could be anything. It could be their family. It could be a run. It could be, reading a book or whatever, right? Mine just happens to be learning how to fold laundry with people inside of it.
I'll let that one sit out there for a minute so people get that. That's awesome. And I just like, I don't want to put your whole business out there, but I do remember times when we have our ups and downs where you're like, I'm going back to jiu-jitsu. I'm going back to training. I know it's going to be a long drive and I'm super busy right now, but I'm going to make that trek out there. I'm going to commit to going back X amount of days a week. And for those of us that are out there, we talk so much about self-care, and it really does make a difference when we sacrifice something else to get to that place that makes us feel alive, so that we can come back to those things we sacrifice with more energy to do them.
100%. And I think you have to figure out a balance that's going to make it work for you, but you have to do what makes you happy, right? And I think it's like, and again, like I came to that point where it's like, it became my situation was like, it was just too far of a drive to make it work based off that, where I'm like, okay, I need to figure, and my biggest thing was I was so loyal to my academy where I was like, well, I'm not going to train anywhere else. I'm just not going to train. And I'm like, that's not really helping anybody, right? I'm not I'm not helping myself. I'm not helping the academy. I'm just not training, right? And so I had to have an honest conversation with myself and my wife and all that. And I was like, okay, I need to figure, and again, my academy as well. And I'm like, listen, I love this place, but I just can't, it's not working for me. And I think this is where people get too fixated on, you need to find an academy that works and that you can remain loyal to. But again, you never forget where you came from, right?
Yes.
Unless the situation is different. And then you just need to get out of there. If it's a bad situation, you need to leave. If it's a great situation, never forget where you left. But just, remember those people that came before you and helped you along the way. That's the key thing, right?
Yes.
Where if that you're still able to find success and celebrate your success with those individuals in your corner, rather than ostracizing yourself and creating enemies, or what they say in the Brazilian, the crianche, or like a cockroach. You're not part of the crew anymore. You're a traitor, right? And I never wanted to be that. I just wanted to be. I wanted to keep training. I still want to be loyal, but I need to find a new spot. And I found a really good group of guys, good group of individuals to really help push my jiu-jitsu game along and push my career along and push my skill along. But I never forgot the individuals that helped me get there as well. And again, I still reach out to those individuals. I still talk to them. I still consider those guys very good mentors of mine. We still have really good conversations, and I'll train with them as soon as all this stuff is over.
Yes.
But it is what it is right now, but we always want to keep doing that.
There's, that makes me think of a line that one of the guys that was in here earlier says, is like, who is your Joseph? Right. And the context was, Joseph Plies and the way that he mentored, and now at this point, obviously he's not around, but who is the person who is building you up, making you better in your craft? And so he asked the question, who is your Joseph? Who is the person that is mentoring you or helping you get better? So that person is going to change, but who is the person that's going to help you at this point in your life to better yourself from here? So like what you're saying there, like community, I heard community in that. I heard bettering yourself in that. I heard taking care of yourself in that. And just finding that balance for all those things is so important. So whether it's your jiu-jitsu or whatever it is for those who are watching it, that gives you that life and challenges you, do it. Don't make excuses for it, right? Like,
that's what it is. A good friend on the show the other day, Ricardo Andolia, and he said, like, nobody's stopping you. Just do it. Right. Yeah. So whatever it is that like you think that might be good, that you think is going to be a good thing, do it. If you think it's a good idea, what's stopping you? Right. If you can make it work, if it's going to help you, if it's going to help progress whatever it is you're working on, you lose. You can try it, and if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, okay, what's the next thing you can move on? Right. Because and again, that's how I look at like jiu-jitsu as like, it's a life skill, right? Because we always get put in uncomfortable positions. That's the goal. The goal is to be able to fight out of those uncomfortable positions and be able to get out of it or whatever, right? So how do you get out of those bad spots? So how do you use energy that's trying to work against you for you? And that's how you have to build it. Right. So it's anything that starts to kind of get, okay, I don't feel it's going to work. Okay, no problem. Adapt and build, right? Adapt and move. Adapt and get 2 steps ahead in this one.
Yes. Right. So on your podcast, so Briars is on here too. Mike, if you want to put it in the comment section, if you could think of one. On my core conversations, I get these great one-liners from people, and I keep throwing them back out there just because I don't want them to fall to the ground and die. Like white belt forever, or support, amplify, connect, or brave space, or one big table. Like there's all these one-liners that I'm like, that is so good. Do you guys have any one-liners that have come out of your conversations with all these brilliant people that just jumps off the page at you? And sometimes you live them out and you can't remember them right on the spot, but I wonder if there's any that really jump out at you that you've heard over your podcast.
There's been a bunch that like I can't really repeat on this podcast.
Really, you can, but
we're trying to keep it PG on this one. And you know what? But I think we've had so many awesome guests where it's not necessarily one-liners, but it's just like words of advice to other aspiring individuals who want to start an academy. I think it's not necessarily like the one thing that was like during this whole thing that when it really started was crew. We had crew Brian Edwards on, and he was talking about businesses and like what it felt like, especially when businesses had to shut down. And he was like, digging a hole, taking all your money, your dreams, and your heart, and lighting it all on fire, right? And he's like, that's what it felt like. But the only way you're going to be able to get out of this is if you rebuild, you keep that spirit, you keep that martial art spirit to build something new. And I think that's the key thing, where we're never going to come back to the way things were right now, right?
Yes.
But if you keep that fire, if you keep that need to, again, learn, adapt, build, to get what it is you want and be able to build off that. And I think that was the key thing where I've taken away from a lot of these individuals where we're down in the trenches right now. That's really what we say. But just wait, like things are going to happen, and it's going to be that time where these clubs are going to come back, or these new teachers. And if you think about all these new people who have been waiting for that opportunity, and maybe maybe it's an individual like, okay, I can't do this anymore, but now it's your time. And all these new, fresh ideas. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away is how many people are roaring to go. And I even look at like Mike and myself, like, and I'm not going to give you guys too many details, but like we have some amazing ideas for, especially for the Canadian market, to help expand like online presence of like individual coaches, where in the US they have some great ideas for like, you know, online platforms of instructionals and XYZ and all this great stuff. But Mike and I have trying to figure out how to do it for the Canadian market, which is what we're trying to expand anyways. Like, yes, we love jiu-jitsu and the actual growth of the whole sport, but when we look at the Canadian market, there's so much talent in Canada that's not being exposed. So we're trying to figure out how, we got some ideas and how we're getting them in the works to build those things. So I don't want to give too much away, but just wait, man. Like, we're going to have some amazing content and some amazing instructional stuff coming out on a new platform that's going to be pretty mind-boggling. So we're excited about that.
That's awesome. So what are you guys doing now? Can you, so the podcast is going on right now. Do you guys have any other classes or stuff we can support? And for those who want to try jiu-jitsu for the first time, could you point people in the right direction with that?
So especially when we look at, like, we have the podcast that's still happening. We're slowly coming out with our little own, like, little merchandise kind of line, which is going to be fun for the summertime. So nothing crazy, just trying to get the community a little bit more built and get our stuff out there a little bit more. We're in, what's exciting, we're in 30 different countries. So 30 different countries are listening to our podcast right now, which is amazing. So we can't really do it without the listeners, which is awesome. So we want to thank them for a big one. But when we look at, as far as like community goes, like Mike is kind of has his own thing going on right now. I can't really say too much about it because he's still working on some stuff. And then, like, for myself, it's more, again, like, until academies really open up, we can't really do too much because unfortunately it's the way it is. But especially like if you're in the Mississauga area, like Evo RMNU is my club that I train out of, and I'll be training out of there. Mike's up in Gracie Humata, which is in the Woodbridge area. It's been around for 20 years. Like, they're some of the OGs, like Dan Maroney, are the OGs of like Ontario grappling. Toma and Dave are like my instructors, amazing instructors. But the biggest thing is, train jiu-jitsu, talk to Mike and I. We will point you in the direction of the GTA on where you live, and it's going to work best for you and the best academy, because we are interconnected with all these different academies, and we want to help build the groups more than anything. And again, it's not about supporting this club that's like, those. There used to be the days of the rivalries and like, only my club and this is it. I mean, I think those days are slowly coming to an end, where we want to open it up a little bit more. And you want it back joint community more than anything.
Yeah, no, the Pilates community doesn't know anything about like different camps at all. Like, they know nothing out there.
Well, like jiu-jitsu slowly accepting that, like, hey, we need to kind of work together on this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Too funny. And regardless of whether we're talking jiu-jitsu or whatever else, like, guys, follow your passions. Like, just like make time for yourself and to be able to give your best version of yourself to your family, to everything else around in your community. AG, man, so good hanging out with you again, man. Thank you so much.
I'm on. I do appreciate it. Martin, you've been doing a fantastic job with this podcast, this conversation. Keep it up. I've been watching it since you started. So it's amazing how far you've grown with it. Keep it up. Don't stop doing it. It's really good.
Thank you, sir. All right, man. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to sign you off, and we're good to go. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Thanks, everyone watching today. Take care.